The containment pod hissed as Alex pulled it from the wreckage, his gloved hands trembling not from fear but from the sub-zero temperatures of Kepler 442b's twilight zone. The crashed Viren scout ship had been there for days, its hull cracked open like an egg spilling bioluminescent fluid across the ice. Most of the crew were dead, their crystalline exoskeletons shattered beyond recognition. But something inside the cargo hold was still alive. "Command, this is Outpost 7. I've got a survivor," Alex said into his comm, his breath fogging inside his helmet. -7, Viren don't take prisoners and they don't leave survivors. Whatever you found, it's not friendly. Terminate and extract data cores only. The voice of Commander Chen was firm, final. Alex looked down at the pod. Through the frosted transplas he could see it, a creature no larger than a terrier, covered in midnight blue fur that seemed to absorb light. Its 6 eyes were closed, its breathing shallow. It had 4 legs tucked beneath its body and a long, prehensile tail wrapped around itself for warmth. The biological readings on his scanner were off the charts: adaptive metabolism, redundant organ systems, neural density that rivaled Earth's dolphins. This was a Xyloc cub, the apex predator of the Viren Empire, the species that had glassed 3 human colonies without warning. "Command, it's just a juvenile, it's dying." "That's an order, Kavanaugh." Alex stood in the howling wind, ice crystals battering his suit. He thought of his daughter back on Earth, 8 years old, obsessed with animals, always bringing home strays. What would Jiggy think of him if she knew he'd killed a helpless creature because someone told him to? He disconnected his comm and tucked the pod under his arm. The cub woke 3 days later in Alex's cramped quarters, a converted cargo module that smelled of recycled air and instant coffee. Alex had named her Jiggy, after his daughter, though he had no idea if Xylocs even had genders as humans understood them. She nearly killed him that first morning. He'd been checking her vitals when those 6 eyes snapped open, each one a different shade of violet, multifaceted like gemstones. Before he could react, she'd lunged, rows of retractable fangs extending from her jaws. Only his quick reflexes and the magnetic restraint field saved him. She slammed into the barrier with a sound like thunder, hissing and spitting, her fur standing on end and crackling with bioelectric discharge. "Easy, easy," Alex whispered, keeping his voice low and steady. "I'm not going to hurt you." Jiggy paced the perimeter of the field, her movements fluid and predatory. She was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, evolution's answer to the question of what happens when you design a perfect killer. But she was also starving. Alex spent the next week learning Xyloc biology from classified military databases he definitely wasn't supposed to access. Jiggy needed a protein-rich diet, preferably live-prey, but would accept synthesized alternatives if bonded to a provider. The bonding process, the files warned, was extremely dangerous. Xylocs imprinted on strength, not kindness, show weakness, and they would exploit it lethally. Alex decided to try anyway. He lowered the field for just a second each day, tossing in food cubes synthesized to Viren military specifications. At first, Jiggy ignored them, watching him with those unsettling eyes. On the 4th day, she ate. On the 7th, she stopped hissing when he entered the room. On the 14th day, she let him touch her. Her fur was softer than he'd expected, each strand seeming to generate a faint warmth. When he scratched behind the ridge where her primary eyes sat, she made a sound, a deep, resonant purr that vibrated through his entire arm. The classified files hadn't mentioned that Xylocs could purr. There were a lot of things the files got wrong. 3 months later, Jiggy had doubled in size. She was the length of a full-grown cougar now, with muscle that rippled beneath her fur like steel cables. Her intelligence was staggering. She'd learned to operate the door controls within a week, figured out the food synthesizer in 2, and had somehow hacked Alex's personal tablet to watch nature documentaries from Earth. She particularly liked the ones about wolves. "You know you're not supposed to be this smart," Alex said one evening, watching her manipulate the tablet with her tail, swiping through videos with deliberate precision. "The military briefings say Xylocs are instinct-driven, barely sentient." Jiggy looked at him with what he'd come to recognize as her approximation of amusement. She tapped a video of orcas hunting seals, then looked back at him expectantly. "You want me to see something?" She tapped it again. Alex played the video. The orcas worked in coordinated teams, using sophisticated tactics to create waves that knocked seals off ice floes. When it ended, Jiggy pulled up another video, wolves hunting elk through deep snow, using communication and strategy. "You're trying to tell me something about pack hunting," Alex guessed. Jiggy's tail swished, her version of a nod. Then she did something that made Alex's blood run cold. She pulled up a news feed from the planetary network. It showed Viren warships entering the system. They were coming for their lost scout ship. They were coming for her. The attack came at dawn. Alarms shrieked through Outpost 7 as 3 Viren interceptors broke through the atmosphere, their weapons systems hot. Alex was already running toward the emergency bunker when he realized Jiggy wasn't with him. Jiggy, come on. She stood in the middle of the corridor, her fur rippling with bioluminescent patterns he'd never seen before, complex, shifting symbols that he somehow understood meant stay hidden. I'm not leaving you. The first explosion rocked the outpost, walls buckled. Atmosphere began to scream out through new cracks. Jiggy looked at him one last time with all 6 eyes, and then she was gone, a midnight blur racing toward the main airlock. Alex ran after her, his heart hammering. He reached the external observation deck just in time to see Jiggy launch herself from the airlock into the frozen wasteland beyond. The 3 Viren interceptors hovered above the ice field, their weapons charging. Then Jiggy began to change. Her body convulsed, expanding, her fur igniting with the same bioluminescent patterns. She reared up on her hind legs and roared, a sound that contained frequencies Alex couldn't hear but could feel in his bones. The interceptors hesitated. And then, impossibly, they landed. Viren soldiers emerged, towering insected figures in powered armor. They approached Jiggy not with weapons drawn, but with their heads lowered in what could only be submission. The largest of them, bearing the insignias of a ship commander, knelt before her. Alex's tablet chimed, a translation protocol activated. Jiggy must have triggered it remotely. The Viren commander's clicking mandibles resolved into words. Forgive us, Crown Princess. We did not know you survived the ambush. Crown Princess. Alex's legs nearly gave out. He'd adopted the Viren heir to the throne. The classified files had called Xylox apex predators and weapons of the Empire. They'd been half right. Xylox weren't weapons. They were royalty. The Viren Empire didn't rule the Xylox. The Xylox ruled the Viren. The war ended 3 weeks later. Jiggy, Crown Princess Jexarithalik's informal Viren, had been the daughter of the Xyloc Empress, taken aboard the scout ship as part of her traditional survival training when separatist Viren factions attacked. They'd meant to kill her and trigger a succession crisis. Instead, a human had saved her. Alex stood in the embassy chamber on the Viren flagship, feeling absurdly small in his dress uniform. Jiggy sat beside him, massive now, nearly the size of an earth elephant, her fur rippling with patterns of contentment. The Empress herself, a creature of such sublime terror that looking at her too long made Alex's hindbrain scream, regarded him with dozens of faceted eyes. You saved our daughter when you could have left her to die, the Empress said through translation. You fed her when you could have let her starve. You bonded with her when you could have remained safe. Why? Alex thought of his daughter back on Earth. Because she needed help, that's reason enough. The Empress was silent for a long moment. Then she made a sound, the same deep, resonant purr that Jiggy made when content. The Viren Empire declares humans pack brothers. We share the hunt. We share the stars. Jiggy bumped her massive head against Alex's shoulder, nearly knocking him over. Her tail wrapped around him gently, protectively. In that moment, Alex understood what he'd really adopted wasn't a killer. It was family. And in the cold mathematics of the galaxy, that changed everything.